Have you ever had that feeling like you're just running on a professional treadmill? You're putting in the long hours, you've got all the right technical qualifications, your resume looks great, but your career just seems to be, well, stuck. You see other people getting the promotions, leading those exciting projects, and you're just left there wondering, what am I missing here? It's a super frustrating and honestly a really common feeling.
Okay, so let's really dive into this, because the answer might be hiding in a set of skills that honestly we're all taught to overlook. In this explainer, we're going to unpack Manoj Tripathi's power of ignored skills, and we'll do it through the story of someone who is in that exact position. Let's call him Alex. He's smart, he's definitely capable, but he's hit a major wall. You see, Alex felt like he was losing the game of life before it had even really kicked off. He was pulling 60-hour weeks at a London tech firm, he'd mastered every piece of software, knew his data inside and out, but he was consistently passed over for leadership roles. His ideas, which he knew were good, would just get shot down in meetings. He was doing everything by the book, but the book just wasn't working.
Then, one rainy Tuesday, feeling completely dejected after another project got handed to a colleague, Alex just wandered into a bookstore, and there it was. He stumbled upon a book with a title that felt like it was written just for him, Power of Ignored Skills. Look, he was skeptical, but he was also desperate enough to give it a shot. And that book? It would become his roadmap out of career stagnation.
So, what exactly are these so-called ignored skills? Well, the book argues that in a world obsessed with hard skills, coding, financial modeling, data analysis, we've totally forgotten the fundamentals. We're talking about things like emotional intelligence, the strategic advantage of deep listening, and the sheer power of perseverance. These are not just nice-to-haves, they're the invisible architecture of real long-term success.
And this is not just some fluffy self-help talk. The book is packed with real-world examples. Think about it. Isaac Newton, observing a falling apple, gave us the law of gravity. Howard Schultz's observation of Italian coffee culture, that led to the global empire of Starbucks. Their genius wasn't just in the final idea, but in the process of observation and empathy, skills that literally anyone can develop.
To make this super concrete, we're going to follow Alex as he actively tries to build 4 of the most critical skills from the book. We're going to see how he applies the power of observation, how he masters the superpower of listening, learns the art of connecting the dots, and finally, how he builds the engine of perseverance. All right, let's break them down.
First one up, the power of observation. Now, we all look at things all day long, but how often do we truly see what's right there in front of us? There is a world of difference between those two things, and that difference, my friends, is a massive competitive advantage.
Alex's old strategy was to just win every argument with data. He'd walk into meetings armed with spreadsheets and pure logic, but it almost never worked. This quote from the book was a total light bulb moment for him. People's minds are changed through observation and not through argument. It hit him that maybe the key wasn't to argue harder, but to observe more deeply. The book defines observation as a conscious practice. It's about mindful awareness, really directing your focus and energy to the present moment so you can see the details, the patterns, and the unspoken truths that are just floating beneath the surface. This doesn't just make you a better problem solver, it actually supercharges your emotional intelligence. It lets you read the subtle currents in a room and understand the powerful messages that are never actually spoken out loud.
So, in his very next team meeting, Alex tried it. Instead of jumping in to defend his proposal, he actually closed his laptop and just watched. He noticed his colleague, Sarah, tapping her pen nervously. He saw his manager, David, let out a little sigh every time the timeline was mentioned. And it clicked. The team's resistance? It wasn't about his data being wrong, it was about their unspoken fear of being completely overworked. They were already burned out.
And that realization led Alex right to the second ignored skill, the listening superpower. He had observed the problem, right? But to actually solve it, he needed to understand it. And that meant he had to stop talking and start listening, like truly listening.
As Tripathi's book points out, we live in a culture of response. We're not really listening to understand, we're listening to reply. We're just waiting for a gap in the conversation so we can jump in with our own point. But active listening, that art of making someone feel genuinely heard, that is what builds the foundation of trust you need for real leadership and collaboration.
The book lays out a really simple 3-step framework for this. First, give the speaker your undivided attention. Seriously, don't be thinking about your brilliant comeback. Second, use small verbal cues to encourage them. Simple things like, I see, or tell me more about that.
Finally, and this is the crucial part, summarize what you've heard. So what you're saying is, this not only confirms you've understood, it shows them you were actually paying attention. So Alex decided to try this out with his manager, David. He asked him for a coffee and just said, "Hey, I got the sense there were some concerns about the project's workload. Could you tell me more about that?" And then he just listened. He didn't interrupt, he didn't get defensive. And he learned that David was under immense pressure from his bosses to cut costs, and a big new project seemed way too risky. This was a piece of the puzzle Alex had been missing for months. For the first time, they were having a real conversation, and their whole dynamic started to shift. Now, this ability to gather hidden information leads us right to our next skill, one that was famously championed by none other than Steve Jobs. He believed that the real key to creativity wasn't just about coming up with brand new ideas, but about connecting existing ones. And hey, before we dive into that, if you're finding these insights valuable, a quick click on that subscribe button really helps us create more deep dives just like this one. And that brings us to our third ignored skill, which is exactly what Steve Jobs was talking about, the power of connecting the dots. It's the ability to see the forest for the trees, to take information from seemingly unrelated places and weave it into a single, powerful idea. This is where true strategic thinking really comes from. It's not about knowing one thing super deeply. It's about knowing a little bit about a lot of things and being able to weave them all together. It's about understanding history, current trends, and what might happen next to create a whole picture. This is the skill that turns raw information into game-changing insight. So, armed with this new understanding of his manager's budget pressures, Alex went back to the drawing board. He pulled up a recent customer feedback report complaining about a clunky feature. Then he looked at new sales data that showed a dip in user engagement. Then he read an article about a new low-cost automation technology. And boom, he connected these three dots and proposed a small, inexpensive project to use that new tech to fix the clunky feature. It would directly address customer complaints and boost engagement, all without needing a massive budget. It was brilliant.
He had the idea. He now had the support of his manager, but that brings us to the final and maybe the most important ignored skill. Because great ideas are totally useless without the engine of perseverance to push them through all the inevitable roadblocks.
The book shares some incredibly powerful stories to illustrate this point. I mean, let's talk about Walt Disney for a second. He was fired from an early job because his boss said he lacked imagination. Can you even believe that? His first animation company went totally bankrupt. He faced rejection after rejection. But his dream acted like a compass, giving him direction even in the darkest storms. For him, failure wasn't the end of the story. It was a prerequisite for success.
And sure enough, when Alex first proposed his new, smaller project to the wider leadership team, it was rejected. Not enough room in the schedule. Now, the old Alex would have taken that as a final no, retreated to his cubicle, and probably complained for weeks. But the new Alex? He saw it as feedback. He persevered. He used his listing skills to understand their scheduling concerns. He refined his proposal with a clearer timeline, and he resubmitted it. And this time, it was approved.
Okay, so let's fast forward 6 months. Alex isn't just surviving anymore. He is thriving. His small project was a huge success. He's now leading a new team, he's seen as an influential voice in the company, and yep, he just got promoted. He didn't go get a new degree or learn a new coding language. He simply started sharpening the skills that were there all along, the very ones everyone else was ignoring.
Now, to help you get started on this yourself, here is a really simple challenge. I want you to try this for the next 7 days. We'll call it an active listening sprint. Each day, pick just one conversation. For the first 5 minutes of it, your only job is to listen. That's it. No interrupting, no planning your next sentence. And when they finally pause, your very first words have to be a summary of what they just said. Give it a try. See what happens.
So here's the bottom line. Success isn't just about what you know. It's about how you interact with the world around you. We've covered 4 incredibly powerful ignored skills today: observation, listening, connecting the dots, and perseverance. The question for you now is, which one holds the most potential for you? Which one skill, if you started working on it today, could unlock your next level? Let us know. Thanks for watching. Go out there and start noticing what's being ignored. I'll see you in the next one.